welcome to the Align with Arlene podcast, Series 2, The Art of Healing. I am delighted to introduce you to the fabulous Mel Churcher. Mel Churcher is an international voice and acting coach and works with clients on stage, screen, TV. She also arranges courses online, courses in person, and has recently published her third wonderful book, The Elemental Actor, How to Release Your Hidden Powers. And she's actually found some time very generously to spend with us to inspire would-be and current actors and to talk about her book. Thank you so much for being here, Mel.
It's a pleasure, real pleasure.
So I have a number of questions for you, if that's okay. First of all, I know obviously now you're involved with coaching, with voice and acting coaching, but originally you were an actor yourself.
I was.
Did you know from a very young age? When did you first realize your passion?
Yes. I knew from a very young age that I loved words. I used to bore people with all the poems that I recited and all of that, and took part in lots of. I was brought up in middle of Africa, so there was not much professional stuff there. So I was in amdrams and everything else. And then around the age of about 15, I went to a big meeting where some professor came from Drama Centre, which is sadly no longer with us, Drama Centre, and did a bit on Malvolio, and then had this group of people who passed a piece of paper around, and it was made it suddenly somebody would make it a bird, and then someone else would make it something else, and something.
Wow.
I thought, wow, you mean there are places you can go and do this? So I left school at 16 and said to my mother, I want to be an actor and I want to go to drama school. And my mum was very easy to persuade. And so in those days, we came over by a big boat. And so we came over and I didn't get in any. And she said, well, it's obvious you've got no talent, so come back again. So I healed myself for the last one, which is, again, a drama school no longer with us, and got in. And so then she went back to Africa and I was in bed sitting, London, swinging 60s. So that the point that it became, I must go to a drama school and do this for a living, was that one. But I thought I was going to be, this is how cocky you are as a kid. I thought, well, I'll earn my living writing and I'll be an actor as well, which is ridiculously fun to think back about that. So anyway, so I came along and I've always been stubborn and and I was an actor for well into my 40s, quite a few decades. So having gone to drama school at 17, quite a long time. And then I moved across and started directing, and just because I was only getting funny parts because I was getting middle-aged, and it's got better, but it's always been bad. And radio. And then I discovered I adored directing. And then, I started coaching in drama schools, teaching in drama schools. Got so excited that if I hung someone over and shook them when they came up, they could act, because they were then, going from their solar plexus area. And then I became a voice coach for a long time until someone asked me to work on a movie. And then that's been my life for the last 3 or so decades. So there you go.
Wonderful. Wow.
There you are.
Summarized it. I was going to say, summarize that 30 years in a few sentences.
Well,
that's amazing.
More like 50. Yes, thank you.
So may I ask you, do you remember how you felt when you had your very first audition, just to take you back, if that's okay?
Absolutely. Well, I was failing all of them. I looked 12. I was 17 and I was wearing some strange red plastic raincoat that we'd bought. And I mean, I was just looked so young. And I just shook. I didn't understand about breathing or any of that. I can remember my RADA audition. I didn't think I'd walk across the stage. I was like absolutely so full of adrenaline. So they didn't say, "Oh, you're terrible," thank goodness, but they said, "Oh, come back in 2 or 3 years' time." But of course, 2 or 3 years' time to come back wasn't possible, because I knew if I went back home, I'd never have the courage or the wherewithal or whatever to come back again. So that was it. But it all worked out.
Well, save the best to last, because it was the last one, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was the last one. And that's why I think one teaches what one has had problems with, is in many cases. So that's why my teaching is trying to help people find a security, a confidence, things they can use that takes that terror away, whether that's, really believing in the world or bouncing off the other person, and definitely the breathing and the posture, that's been my mission, has been to try to not allow people to go through what I went through.
Yes. Well, yes, that's what I was actually going to ask you, if that's what inspired you, and obviously it did. I hugely believe that we go through experiences so we can feel them and help others, and you've done that about 1,000,000-fold. So with I'm just going to take you through a few, excuse me, get my right teeth in. I'm going to take you through a couple of things, if that's okay, and you can just say no.
Of course.
So what I really felt, because the elemental actor is incredible, I'm only 30% through and I'm completely engulfed. And I adore the elements myself. I'm really interested in shamanism, but it's obviously not about shamanism. It's about just engaging and embracing those elements in our body, and working with the metaphor of the text. When you were Hermia, so there is a reason to me saying this, when you were Hermia and it was open air in Regent's Park, did you feel that? Did you feel the elements through you as you were performing? Do you feel that maybe started the inspiration, or?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I mean, Shakespeare itself is so full of elements. Cleopatra says, "I am of air and fire." So, I probably didn't consciously accept that as soon as you work with Shakespeare, you are absolutely in an elemental world and working with elements. We actually started with a tour of the Middle East on that. We're going back to 1975. A tour of the Middle East before we went to Regent's Park.
Okay.
And so that was pretty elemental, because we were playing in front of the Sphinx, and and in an ancient theatre outside Istanbul, and all over the place. So, and then we came to Regent's Park, and then there's the funny side of elemental, because it was before the 76 really heat wave, but it was still really hot, and we reckoned. We didn't do matinees in the Middle East, but when we came to the park, we did, and we reckoned it was hotter in the park than it had been in the Middle East that summer. Wow. And then sometimes it would really rain, and then Hermia and Helena are out in the forest asleep while an awful lot happens, and then we'd be lying there absolutely soaked with rain. So yeah, I think one interesting thing about elements, if you think about movies or even theatre or anything, or great playwrights' work, is there's two things. There's the elemental roles, and then there's the elemental backdrop. And you look at anything, whether you think Lawrence of Arabia, or you think about Gravity, or you think about the backdrops of raging seas, or space, or endless sand, and then you have to think, is your role with that element or pulling against that element? There's a whole lot of stuff. And of course, Shakespeare is so elemental. And I don't use the humours so much, because they tell you how to play it a little bit. If you're looking at being sanguine, or you're looking, but the actual elements are fantastic, as indeed they are all over the world. And we're not talking about the modern elements, we're talking about the classic elements, which arrive everywhere. But of course, in the Taoist Chinese system, there are 5, and they are to do with the seasons, and wood, and spring, and so on, and metal, and harvesting and so on. So they're all wonderful metaphors. And we use metaphors like that all the time, you know, digging for the truth, floating for happiness, feeling I was drowning. I mean, you could go on and on. And so, as you can see from the book, my suggestion is that using your body to act out the way your role would describe their situation puts you instantly into some muscle memory and a feeling of a life that you're actually living or have lived. So that's why I'm so keen on them. But yes, but Hermia in the park was wonderful. And then, of course, I say, of course, why would you? I mean, of course, but of course, from my point of view, then I was always working with the dream for so long because, well, not until the 80s or was it even the 90s? It was a long time later, it was 12 years, I think it was the 90s, yes, mid-90s, that I became the voice and text coach at Regent's Park Open Air. So I was the voice department, there wasn't anyone else. And so even though I was doing movies and things by then, I spent every summer working in that wonderful space. And we must have done the dream, at least half a dozen times in that 12 years I was there, maybe more. And I've directed it as well a couple of times. So so my memories of Hermia are now melded with all the memories of all the other incredible Hermias that I work with and all the rest of it. Yeah.
So just because you mentioned screen, I was really feeling as you were talking about that. Sorry, excuse me, I'm just going to have some water. Sorry. This is what happens when you're an hour early.
Sorry.
No, it was me. So
we had a confusion between English and Spanish time.
So what I would like to, because I don't want to give too many spoilers about Elemental Actor, because it's just been released and it's fabulous.
I don't think you can really. I mean, there's a lovely blog on the Nick Hearn Books page, which kind of mentions it all, you know. And by the way, writers get like 40 pence a book. So there's no way I'm trying to make money out of anybody, but it's a pretty cover. Thank you, Nick Hearn Books. And it has got some lovely Arthur Rackham pictures in it.
It's very beautiful. I will pop all the links down so you can if you're not in the UK, you can receive it as an ebook, as I did, and you can also get the paperback version as well. So
yeah, I imagine, I don't know if you have in Spain an Amazon option, but it always ends up on Amazon as well.
Yes,
I've
got Amazon Kindle.
Books,
yeah,
but they're not unfortunately posting to Europe. Let's hope all that gets settled really soon.
No, I'm sure it will do. I'm just saying for people who want it now. So I'd like to, because you know, I've been immersed in the book and I'm trying not to talk too much about it, but what I would like to say is it's so beautiful how you discuss you know, really feeling into your role before you're in the screen environment.
I mean, we've worked together, haven't we?
Yes.
We must have done some elemental work on that time that we worked together. Yes.
That's one of the main reasons that when I saw the Elemental Actor, I remember in the workshop, which was fabulous, and I loved all of it, but this was my favorite part, was talking about the elements. Yes. I absolutely loved that. And now there's a book. Yay.
Well, they're just so much part of our culture, and because they're so pivotal to us, you know, we know how it feels to be happy or float or have a faith or give up to the wind or be high or whatever it is. We know that bit of air, and of course our breathing, our breath of life, and all the elements are both life-giving and life-destroying. You know, breath of life is totally life-giving, but have none and it's destroyed. So, you know, and whether that's real or literal or whether it's metaphorically because you've forgotten to stop and breathe as your role, are two different things. You know, we have such connections with being grounded and centers. Every ancient culture that you look at, you know, is about settling and getting yourself grounded and solar plexus, and then all the idea of modern movies particularly drawing tremendously on ancient myth and magic. And so what lies beneath the surface, you could call it subtext, but all of us, what are we digging to find down there? It could be the gold, it might be the dragon, but there's the stuff underneath. And also in this day and age, look at our planet. If we are not looking after Earth, we have nothing to live on, and if it becomes dust to dust and all that, we've all had it. And then fire, which has so many different energies, it can be the fire of ambition and power, it can be the fire of anger, it can be the fire of love or the spark of excitement, but it can also be, which you are definitely part of, and in some way, so am I, to help actors in my field or whatever, that there's the warm hearth of healing, where you take the life-giving part of fire. Fire can be destructive. Fire is also life-giving in every way, cauterizing, healing, warming, killing off the germs of what we eat. We die of hypothermia, all of that. And so we haven't, I always say, what fires you up? What is your fire? And for many, it's an underrated but immensely important fire, is the fire which is the warmth that you want to bring people in, to heal, to feed, to share, to love. That is probably the most important fire of all. And then we have water, which again is a lovely idea of a shimmering surface with things underneath that you may not have discovered. But it's also sorrow and pain, and when people can't cope, they feel like they're drowning and they need to be rescued and brought back to air. So without really dwelling on it, I think our lives are always elemental in a way that we don't really realize. My problem as an acting coach is we're dealing with learned text, so I have to help people, what I call jump in the magic circle, so that they and the role are fused, and therefore those elemental needs, just temporarily while they play that wonderful game, become their needs. But a lot of the work can be used for oneself, finding, jumping in the circle into your confident self, refinding what drives you, what gives you passion, what gives you joy, all of these elemental things.
That's one thing I've really felt as I've been reading, is you can apply it to every moment of life. If you're going out shopping, for example, I don't know, you could apply it to that in terms of, feeling a bit tired, but I'm going to ground myself. I'm going to go into that environment where there's lots of people, stay grounded and do my shopping. It sounds very basic.
And then I'm going to breathe the air and hug a tree and go for a walk.
Exactly. A very good friend of mine imagines flowers all around her before she goes shopping.
Yes. I have to confess, terrible confession, that since the pandemic, I have stayed with the delivery vans for the supermarkets, because I used to find something, I don't know, so bleak and cold and dehumanizing about supermarket shopping. So I still use small shops, the little shops, the lovely vegetable shops, and but I get my deliveries delivered now, so I can just be with the real flowers in the garden.
Yes, gorgeous.
And not have to cope with supermarkets.
We're really lucky here, because we've got an incredible lady who grows organic vegetables. So we get a delivery every day. So scraping off the soil. I talked about this the other day, actually, with another guest.
Right. Yes. Well, we have a local veg box delivery once a fortnight, but we also grow our own. We're right in the countryside, and we've just got a lovely person to help us with the garden, and she's putting in loads of sort of compost, don't dig and all that to redo. But we've got a polytunnel and a fruit cage and a vegetable patch. We just don't have the energy, just turn to some more help.
Well, speaking of organic, seamless link. So I didn't want to mention the magic circle because I didn't know if that was a spoiler. So I'm all into.
I don't have spoilers, no.
I'll stop saying that word. So what I really like as well is how you describe how the performance is the relaxation. So when
Oh,
actors...
yes, that's the Joan Littlewood quote, actually. She's
Mm.
a wonderful theatre director. I expect you've heard of her in the 1950s in UK, first working class theatre and the blend of music hall and theatre. An incredible woman. Yes, she said the preparation is the work and the performance is the relaxation. That's a lovely. I wish someone had told me that at 17.
That was one of my questions, actually, that I don't need to ask. What do you wish somebody had told you at the very beginning?
Yes. How to breathe properly. and the fact that forget you, just try and bounce off. But then, in those days of monologues, you're a bit like self-tape now. The person you're bouncing off isn't really there. So you've got to imagine it. So somebody should have said to me, just think of it like those games you played when you were 7. And then you'd be all.
Yeah, that just feeling the childlike curiosity and the sense of fun. Yeah.
Learned lines are really difficult. That's why non-actors always put them in their top list of hates. When they say I hate speaking in public, what they're really saying is I hate having to say something I prepared. That's what we do for a living. There you go. If an actor's highly affected when taking on a character that's nothing like them, well, that's where all your metaphors and living another life and acting out the stories they tell and all that comes in. But what's really interesting, maybe, is how do you deal with playing a role who's too close to you, that's gone through some horrendous experience, but you would like to play the role, but you went through that too. That I have come across a lot in my time.
Yeah. Wow, yes.
And that's really interesting. And I'm very happy to say that those people in the end were glad they'd taken the role and found it cathartic, because I never work from saying, remember the things that happened to you or do the things that you haven't dealt with, because I think you know all that anyway. It's already in there. So instead, you need to go, I know that. I don't need to go and remember it and find it. It's there. Now I need to look for the other life that's actually different to mine, different parents, different place, different situation, maybe different period, different place, and concentrate on that. And then the other thing I offer, because I think there's two main ways you can become fused in that magic circle. One is by accepting everything you are and then kind of melting the top with your new metaphors or improvisations or thoughts or whatever it is, or visualizations, whatever way helps you. But the other is to actually take a metaphor, and clear yourself right down, you, right down and seal yourself off safely. And then a bit like Lady M in Shakespeare's Scottish play, I'm very superstitious, you can then go inhabit me and you can become the role that terrifies you, murders or things that you'd never do, always had terrible things happen to them. And then at the end, you jump out the magic circle and you go, that was just a game, bye-bye. Even every night when you leave the set. And then bring yourself back in. And it sounds crazy, but it's really helpful. And over the pandemic, I've always done a bit of Tai Chi and Qigong and so on. And during the pandemic, and Shiatsu, I've not taught, but experienced, etc. And so I've been doing a wonderful class, which is a mixture of Shiatsu and Qigong over this time. Very, very healing. And a lot of these things that you do in that are things that I've done in my work as a coach, or that other coaches do, that maybe this is just instinctive, that you want to shake out at the end of the day, or you want to, I think it's an instinctive way of both embracing and playing the game and then shaking it off like you did when you were 7 and going home for a cup of tea, or no, it wouldn't have been tea, it would have been orange juice at 7. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And also with the animals, taking on that persona of the animal as a protector.
I like hidden animals as well. It makes you safe.
Yes.
If you have to use some sensuality to get power over somebody, and in one of these roles that are a little bit tricky, then burying a big cat or something, which has claws and teeth, but also can relax and feel the sun and then jump into action, gives you everything that director's asking for, but you are safe, because deep inside you, victim. You're a panther or a leopard or,
fabulous.
So things like that can be really helpful. Anything anything that makes us feel safe, spurs our imagination and gives ourselves permission to go where we don't normally dare to go, or where we stop judging ourselves or deciding how to do things. And so I guess that's true in our own lives as well.
Yeah.
You know, what frees you to try that thing that you're afraid of? I mean, if you're afraid of it for a very logical reason and it's dangerous, then avoid it. But if you're afraid of it because you're afraid to fail, maybe you need to find a fire.
Yes.
Maybe you want to go
jump off the cliff.
Jump off a cliff metaphorically.
Metaphorically.
Real, then you've got to make sure the mattress underneath is really large.
Or fly.
Again, remembering Icarus and all that. Flying metaphorically, fantastic. Flying literally, make sure the aircraft's safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
But metaphorically, you see, we can do all these things in our dreams, in our games, in our inner selves.
So because with the imagination, so as you've already mentioned, there's lots of work at the moment that is very solitary. So when there's self-tapes, or when there's, you know, engulfing in the role before arriving on set, it's just creating, as you said, that childlike sense of fun around and really going in. And one of the exercises that you have, and I can edit it out if it is too much, is about going into the subtext. And I thought that was beautiful about, so when learning the thoughts, because you call them thoughts rather than lines, is going into the subtext, and you know, what am I as that person, because that is me, and that's who I am. It's in my body. That's who I am feeling in this very moment. I think that's wonderful.
And even just with the text, riffing on the lines and letting things come out. I mean, we have to somehow make that text come alive. I know that not everybody that watches your podcast, is that what you call it, your podcast, is an actor. But there are many times that ordinary people have to do things they're afraid of. And so that magic circle, you know, I literally sometimes get people to jump in the imagined circle and be the role. But equally, you can see yourself at your most confident moment, and you can jump in and be that confident. You know, you can press a wall and find that strength, and then make sure that you decide to leave it, take the strength with you, and go to the difficult situation. If you've got to do a speech at a wedding or something, you've written it all down, maybe don't completely learn it. Just find the bullet points and then riff on it, you know, just so you feel like you. The important thing is, for actors and non-actors, you are many, 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 many people. You're capable of being anywhere and anything in every mood. And that includes the role, but it includes you yourself. So it's just not feeling, oh, this thing makes me very scared and now I'll be scared. You know, I wish I'd known that when I did my
because as you said, it's I mean, your book is very much as you already said, it's not just actors, but it's for this whole series is about the art of healing. And I believe there's a really fine line between creative arts and healing arts.
Well, creativity is healing.
Yeah. And so for example, when there's an intuitive empath, let's say, who's very heart-based, very, very up here with her or their or his chakras, but have problems with grounding, this is wonderful to delve into, absolutely wonderful. And also as I was reading it, because I enjoy writing as well, as I was reading, I was really feeling how beautiful, and this is something to ask you as well, would you imagine writers going into this as well, being the role? And
absolutely. I actually have run workshops for writers, did the London screenwriting one and so on, and worked a lot with writers in different universities and so on. And I think getting them to think like the actor, but I think writers do, to a certain extent anyway, become the good writers, the person they're talking about as they write it. But it's also some writers, when they begin, want to give us lots of ideas and things, which is great. But within that, the roles have to be specific, you know. I can remember one incident with a young chap who's written and done really well since, but he had this lovely idea about, okay, so in this short film, Adam and Eve come back to Earth, and then they change things, and then they go back together. So I started asking, oh, okay, now when they come back to Earth, do they wear clothes, and how do they find the clothes? Now, you can tell me they do a magic thing and they're the clothes, but you have to decide that. Or is it not that? Do they have to go and then see what they're wearing, and, et cetera, stupid things. But just on and on and on I went until it became a logical world that an actor could play.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know what it's like, and you go, well, that's a really interesting film, but how would that alien have got to there if they're, do you know what I mean? It has to be logical. It'd be a magic world, but it must be obey its own rules, not break them. Because then we go, I don't understand that. And actors can't play ideas. They have to find a real human elemental being. And also, I think every role and every person has all the main elements, and then the magic circle I call quintessence, the whole, it's the Aristotelian, Aristotle's fifth element, the ether, the circle, etc. In the end. And so if you are playing a role, you need all four, but you may find that your role has, just like us as humans, has more air in them than others, or more water in them, or more practicality and than the other elements, or it might be a temporary thing, falling in love. So see, we can use that all the time, and my shiatsu tai chi thing does all the time. Are you feeling really floaty today? Then we must ground you, like you said. Or are you feeling very grounded, in which case do some floating? We need a balance. We need everything to be balanced, but our roles often, for a short time, or as a personality, like air, like the dude in The Big Lebowski or the Westerners, are non-rooted people until a situation makes them have to find that, or find that fire. So that's really interesting. But if you leave some out, then you've got a cartoon character. You can't not have at least some of all of them. Otherwise, you're not fully human. And so,
two-dimensional.
So that's why it's really important for every human being to explore, if you want the metaphorical idea of elements, all the elements, the compassion, the empathy. I also mentioned the chakras. I know that it's not, I do say this is an acting book, so you can just call them centers, but most of us are too much in here, and we need to get to the solar plexus area, which is where we live and where we laugh and where we feel and what jumps us out of the way of the car and everything else. And if that gets locked off, I've got some little audios that go with it, and I've got one about thawing. When we have emotional pain or problems or rejection as actors, or whatever it is, we actually freeze bits of ourselves. We lock them in. I learned this early on, because I taught in drama schools for about 10 years, and I did direct, but I was also head of voice, blah, blah, blah. And so I used to find a lot of crying in my first years, when all I was doing was putting them on the floor and letting them breathe, because they were unlocking a lot of stuff, and they felt fine afterwards. They were letting go of things that were holding in. And of course, that happens to us all our lives. So probably, I don't always do it, but probably all of us ought to lie on the floor and go through everything and send some warmth and unfreeze the bits of ourselves that have got locked. You would know more than I. But that's I think important, very important.
No, but I absolutely agree. It's so beautiful, and it's very, very easy to do as well. You can lie out in the sun for 3 minutes and just feel the warmth of the sun melting everything away. It's simple. It doesn't have to be a huge spiritual moment or working with the chakras. It's just, as you said, just melt it away. It's gorgeous.
Just go and smell that rose or anything. There's a million ways. I'm so lucky in the countryside, and just watching clouds and seeing things in bloom and eyes everywhere. But it's certainly got an energy.
They have. I could say what they mean shamanically, but I'll tell you afterwards. So I'd like to go back to, where you were saying when you first realized that you had the real passion for coaching, and then you were talking about how helping your students just release everything. And I'm doing this because I'm bending over. So how is that that feeling? Is there a feeling of unity, would you say, when you're in your coaching and your acting sessions, when you're physically there and when you're online as well? Is there a real sense of unity and a real sense of connection, would you say, to bring that out?
You mean between myself and the other actor or actors? Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
100%. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And how does that feel? This is what I was trying to ask. So that first moment where you saw somebody come up and you saw that they realized their role, they had an epiphany moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually very physiological as well, because they were obviously locked here where we feel. And then if you hang someone over, particularly making sure the neck goes, obviously be careful of your backs if you're trying this at home. Let your knees be soft and gently go down. But then you need to come up and bring your head really last. And if you keep speaking on the way up, take breaths when you need them, then when you come up, you're working from here. That's why it works. Because it doesn't work with hair and makeup, which is why I've got other versions as well. But that was where I first sort of went. And then when I joined the RSC, Royal Shakespeare Company, as a voice coach, there's a wonderful woman my book's dedicated to, Cicely Berry. And I told her how it was extraordinary because, and I told her about the physical things, that your voice is then rooted and free and how wonderful it is. And she just looked at me with these very bright blue eyes and said, "But what for?" And I said, "Well, to communicate with others." And she went, "Right." And I was in. That was the job.
Fantastic.
Because, yes, it's all about communication, isn't it? And for me, I always feel there are some givens. The relaxed breathing, unless your role is running from a lion, but your relaxed breathing and posture, because the only reason people come forward or bring their shoulders up or whatever, unless there's a very specific other reason, is just, again, the feeling of needing to protect, which then cuts you off from the very thing you need. So those two remain constants. But otherwise, part of the joy that I get is fishing around with the other person and just trying to find a key that unlocks them to feel free and go for it, And that's the exciting bit that I never would ever tire.
And because you also, it's not just actors, is it? You also work with business executives as well.
Yes. I don't do that anymore because you're meant to look smart and be well turned out, and I don't know how to do that anymore. But I did for a long time. I did long before I worked with actors. I always felt that I didn't have the right to work with actors because I wasn't a superstar or whatever.
Okay.
And so it was quite late on that I then sort of first worked with an evening drama school. I love this. And then very quickly worked everywhere and all over the place and so on. So that was my own worry, that it wasn't. But from my 20s, I was working with business people, and I worked with them right up till, I don't know, 15 years ago. I still would occasionally.
They're not out, just if it's in terms
not
of
sensitized to their bodies, yes. But of course, you're using the same things. I used to do the cats and dog thing instead of elements, so that the people that are full of empathy are the open-handed dogs, and so all actors tend to be that, and then the cool, calm people that spend the money tend to be the cats. That was one of the ways in for the physical stuff and the breathing. I will tell you one quick story. I had one business guy on a 3-day course, and he would not believe, when we're relaxed and you lie on the floor and you breathe, what's happening is, as you breathe, your diaphragm contracts and goes downwards, so your outer muscles get out the way, so you feel your stomach go away from you when the breath comes in, and then back when your breath goes out. Well, he argued with me all the time for the first 2 days. No, look, see, I'm breathing it going in, Just like when the doctors put a stethoscope and they say, take a deep breath, and you take a deep breath. They go, no, a deep breath, until you eventually give in and take a high. And they go, thank you. Because nobody, when they think about it, if they're not trained, does do relaxed breathing. So he argued me. And then on the third day, he came in and he said, Mel, you're right. And I went, oh, that's nice. Why am I right? He said, yeah, your belly does go up when the breath comes in. I was watching the football and my wife brought me my third Baileys last night, and I thought, oh yes, she's right.
Fantastic.
Don't you the tension that people hold when they work in that difficult world of heavy business? You know, I was usually working with the people sort of higher up the building, and they work with so much tension that they've just forgotten how to let go and breathe.
Football and 2 Baileys.
Yeah, watch the football and have 2 Baileys, and on the third you go, oh gosh, oh yes, that's doing that now.
It's funny because I've been doing all my breathing exercises anyway, but as you've been talking, I've automatically been really noticing. And I have my Hara stone here as well.
Great. What does that do? Tell me about that.
So the Hara stone, I work with hot stones. It's a bit warm at the moment, but they ground. So it's very beautiful. And this one is to put over your solar plexus and lie with it over your solar plexus, so it releases everything.
So it's you earthing yourself, but also connecting it to your fire.
Yes. Yeah, lovely. Exactly, because they're hot as well.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh,
don't know why I felt to say that, but here they are, and I'm surrounded by crystals.
Sounds like I've got some lovely flat stones in the garden. I shall try them.
Yeah, it's gorgeous because you can just leave them out in the sun, and then when you put them on your skin, because they're actually basalt stones, so that it's volcanic rock.
Oh, wonderful.
So they're very, very, very old as well. The stories they could tell.
Yes. Well, I borrow from lots and lots of places, and I do acknowledge whenever it's a conscious borrowing. So I've borrowed quite a lot from things like the shiatsu, and I thanked them in the notes. Because things just stupid things like the tapping down. I mean, we all used to go as voice coaches, but now I know this is the lung channel and all of that, you know.
The meridians.
Tremendous difference. And if you need energy, you know, that tapping down the outside of your legs and back up the inside and all that, you're ready to go. So I think
shaking of the hands.
Well, any of those. But then we all do that, you know, to get rid of the tension. And that's true, but there's everything has also deeper things when you're doing it. So,
beautiful. So in fact, you introduced me in a way because you mentioned the Qigong when I was on the course with you. You reminded me again, and it is beautiful. It is all the elements, and you can. I mean, just talking about it, I can feel the chi happening.
Exactly, yes, the yin and the yang. Yin. Yeah, exactly. Really exactly. And I mean, everything that we've ever done about posture, from anyone, you know, singer or anything, you know, the golden thread that takes you up to the heavens from the center, but ground your feet, but let your knees be relaxed, the whole thing. I mean, I think like everything else, you know, everything is connected. Trouble with drama schools is they get specialists, and so you end up doing a voice and then doing movement and then doing acting, but actually in life, everything is fused. The whole thing is fused. So what you work with, what I work with, what my shiatsu friends work with, what yoga teachers work with, whatever, the whole thing is a fusion. And then if you go into a country which they're not cramped into subway trains and everything else, where people are really using the land and dancing and things, they don't have to be told that, because everything is fused. Just like children don't have to be told that everything is fused. But then eventually we grind down to one way we live and one way we work, and the rest gets stiff and disappears. And so we need people like you, and if you're an actor, possibly like me, but there are many others like me as well. And we need that to reconnect the bits that we forget about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like removing the imprints that we've, so like you said, as children, we just explore, curious, and then little by little society imprints, family expectations start going on, don't they? And it's just
and the physical things of being at a desk all day, or driving a van all day, or that you don't have time to go out and dance or breathe or lie in the sun. That a lot of people were just running and running and running. So the body and the mind are so connected that if you hold your body in some particular way, that affects how you think. If you think in a particular way, it affects how you move. It's indivisible, you know. The whole thing is a constantly moving, flowing fusion, you know. And we get in the way and we try and pin it down.
Yes.
That's why I really hate expressions like "I nailed that." If you nailed it, it's dead. No, it is another possibility that is endless. Yeah.
I like that. I've never thought of that, actually. Yeah, that's a really good point. That done. Wow. And you know, you mentioned how, you know, many other acting coaches, etc. But for me, you are the best. You are amazing. And I've already one of my special guest speakers would like to meet you. So I will introduce you.
Yes, please do.
He's hugely creative and beautiful, and works between both. He was a professional choreographer, and he's a singer, and so much more. But I tell you.
Yes, well, I mean, this is the thing. If you're creative, you're creative. Then you can move into other areas of creativity, and you bring such a lot to it. Well, as you do, as any human being, you bring yourself, you bring things. Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, because the reason that I really felt to create this series is because I'm very creative, but also being an intuitive empath, I allowed some really beautiful creative opportunities to go through fear, through comparison, overwhelm, you know, through unworthiness, through distraction, all that kind of thing. So this is why I really wanted to create this. Well, you've already said, so people don't have to go through that. So, and I really feel as well, it's never too late. So, for example, yes, there's certain ages in every industry, but it's never too late, is it, to embrace your creativity?
And things are getting better across the board, whether we're looking at ethnicity or people with disablements, or whether we're looking at age. Doors are opening, maybe not wide enough yet, but they are, and things are changing. And technology has become so much cheaper that people are able to start creating themselves. Like we're doing a podcast at the moment, so things today. Now, I really like, but didn't know that term, intuitive empath.
Okay.
So is it an actual term, or is it what you feel that you're intuitively empathetic? Obviously, that's what it means.
Yes. So to explain, an empath, many of us and many in the creative industry are empaths. It's being empathetic and feeling what's going around.
Would you be creative without it, would be my next question, especially in a collaborative business.
Exactly. So this is my whole reasoning for this, is these really lovely intuitive empaths who have all this gorgeous creativity inside but are hiding. I really want to help them be inspired by listening
the rest of the
exactly. But listen to fabulous people like yourself and feel that they can be part of this. So an intuitive empath is somebody who gets messages.
That I don't think I get. So except for my own brain.
So being an empath is exactly what you're describing, is feeling the moment, is feeling the energy around, but you also feel the energy of other people as well.
True. That's what we should all do.
Yes. We're going much more towards the divine feminine, so it's becoming more prevalent actually that more and more people are feeling this. And an intuitive empath is somebody. So, for example, I'm an Akashic channel. So when Aline's out the way and I'm doing a Akashic channel reading, I'm intuitively speaking to, without getting into too much about it, to the guides of somebody else and receiving that. And in my everyday, I'm an intuitive empath, so I feel and get messages more often than not from everybody around me. It's why I love nature so much.
Right, right.
So that's an intuitive empath.
To a lesser degree, I think everybody that is working with someone else, whether they're doing shiatsu and feeling where they need to think, or whether I'm working with someone on a role and feel the bit that needs help, or whatever it is. So you are obviously, beyond that, but I think all of us,
equal.
all of us, apart from an awful lot of people that run our world, who are not the least bit empathetic or intuitive.
No.
And this is our problem, I suppose. Yes.
Yeah. And
I think that note.
Yes. But following on from that, I firmly believe as well, for example, I can't watch the news all the time. I try not to watch the news because I do believe there's a bit of scaremongery going on. And, as you said about the let's not say the world leaders, but well, maybe the world leaders. There's an awful lot going on that if we just keep sending out the love, keep sending out the light, it might sound a bit cliche. It's not Pollyanna. It's actually quite serious. We keep sending out the love. We keep sending out the light, because you can't. It's not a fight. It's a balance of the masculine and the feminine. And if you're reacting with hate to fear, then that's just going to exacerbate. And by working with love and working with light, and listening to our intuition and really feeling, because, for example, this idea for the podcast series, I was in one of my own processes, and it was on day 9. I thought, I have to get in touch with Mel. I don't know why, but I have to get in touch with Mel. And
you see, that led you to take practical action, because the only thing that I would add to all of that is that has to make us take positive action. Absolutely. Whether it be, making sure that we're looking after the planet better.
Yes.
I mean, it's good to feel everything you said, and then out of that, we have to look after our planet and try to make other people understand that. Yes,
absolutely. But that's what I was talking about with so if there's, you see, I'm very fairy. So if there's so an intuitive empath like me who's very fairy, airy, to ground. So for them to feel, to go to an audition, for them to feel, that I really want to do that and take the practical action.
Yes, then you need your earth, you see, your fire and your earth. Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. And there is something that I was wanting to speak to you about as well. I mean, we've mentioned many things, but one of the main themes so far, I just held my Hara stone as I said that. One of the main themes so far in all the podcast episodes has been to have fun, just to enjoy.
Absolutely. Well, the joy, I've got a whole chapter on the joy. Yes. I mean, the whole point of it is, the business itself can be very joy destructive. It's really hard to get work, to get paid. You have to keep reminding yourself why you're doing it. You're doing it for the joy of doing it. And if you happen to earn money and things like that as well, great. But we mustn't forget that why we did it was to find that joy in creating, that joy we felt as kids, that joy in becoming someone else. I'm Superman and I can fly, whatever it is. We have to refine that, because otherwise, once that's gone, then, you need to go and garden or go and do something else, or, run, or, you need to stop for a while and come back to it, or go and paint pictures for a while, or find something else wonderfully creative. And, because it can be if we're talking about, the acting business, it can be a tough place and a fairly destructive place, because it's run by the people that do it, which in my business terms with a happy hands up dog, and the people that control it, who were not horrible, but the cats that were very contained, and they're not a great mix. So you have to find a way to keep the joy. Yeah.
Gorgeous. And
And you can play a cat, you can play one of those. That's great. But the very act of you wanting to play it means you're not one, in a funny way. Because you're not here, you're here.
Yes. And then also, so self-care is hugely important as well.
Absolutely. I mean, vocally, cooling, warming up, cooling down so you don't lose your voice, blah, blah, blah. As we've already said, trying to recharge once a week by lying on the floor and making sure that you've not got tension stuck there, etc., etc. By having by not being afraid in a good way to say, I honestly don't want to play that role, or I feel we need, an intimacy coach, or when I first worked on movies, and I'm going back to the 90s, early 20s, when I went abroad, they had nurses who came along with hydration fluids. You were looked after. That's all gone now. You go and make a movie, it's never see one anymore. You're on your own, and it's really unhealthy environment because there's smoke everywhere. Okay, they call it atmos or whatever, it's still burning stuff. And your heavy clothes in summer and freezing cold in the middle of the night. And so, yes, you really, and there isn't always somebody like me to say, no, they can't be sick again. They won't have a voice tomorrow, or whatever. So, yes, we have to, in a good way, be kind to ourselves while still obviously supporting the project, etc. But we do have to make sure we take care of ourselves, and we end up healthy afterwards.
Yes,
in every way, which is part of my magic circle. That I know that there are some famous people that do this that have won Oscars, but they've also left the business quite early on. There are people that stay in a really difficult role 24 hours a day for 5 months. You don't have great relationships usually at home, and obviously it affects you. So my thing is really, another reason for these metaphors is it gives you a way of redoing it and being back in what a sportsman will call the zone. So you can just whoosh when you take your clothes off and put your own on and go home and be you again. And of course the experiences will always be there, but it takes quite a while, I think, for people to heal from some of these things that they play if they don't look after themselves and allow themselves to breathe, to come out and to start again the next time they're on set, and not be permanently being that physically difficult person or that emotional murderer or full of fire and anger. Let it go, then find it again with your magic circle and your movement and the phrase you can use, and they're back there. And then, like we did when we were kids. And we believed it, absolutely. But we were able to go, right, let's stop now and go and get something to drink, and we'll come back tomorrow, and then it's probably a different game. But yeah.
Because so many take on the role and with the method acting and just stay.
Yes. And method acting is, I don't quite know what method acting is, because we all are, most of us have some Stanislavski base or whatever. So it depends, I always say whose method, which method. I don't think anybody needs, you're in a wheelchair or you're not eating or you're whatever. You don't have to, I think, stay that way till the end of the movie, because it takes 5 months and you will be changed, and people around you won't be coping, and you'll have lost some of your elements and your auras and your empathy. If suppose you're playing a cruel person and you never want to come out of it, so you stop doing that at home as well. I mean, it's not good for you. It's not good for the people around you, and I don't think it makes you a better actor. I would go along with Judi Dench, who loves to get rid of all her decisions, who takes, who jokes, who whatever. And yet, when the minute the camera turns, she's there. She's not the only one, there are millions of them. And And anyway, we don't know if it's true. Do these people really stay in 24/7? But a lot of my drama students think you have to. And I would honestly say that is only one way to work. And I don't think it's a kind or healthy way for yourself for you to work.
No, and as you said, for your family and your friends as well, if you're in that.
Yeah.
And I just completely lost my train of thought.
If you're in a different accent, stay in it all day and don't come in. Go ahead.
Right. I love accents. I'm always doing with my cats.
What were you going to say?
What I was going to say was it's completely gone. I'm so sorry.
It happens to me all the time at the moment.
I don't know if it's the heat wave or what it is, but it was very relevant.
Was it to do with staying in the role all the time? Or being kind to yourself? That was where we just come from.
Yes, yeah. I'm so sorry, Mel. I'm really not normally like that.
No. Creating poor joy or just to have fun. How much would you agree it's important in everyday life to be creative and joyful for fun's sake?
Yeah, I've got gospel. It's nothing to do with that. It was something that just came to me, and it's whisked away.
Come back to you.
Yes, yeah. I know what it was. Yes.
Right.
So and this is hugely important, you know, as we're talking about coming out of the role and leaving the role behind, but also you said about people in a situation where they're, I don't know, in a role for 10 years and going back and finding the freshness. There are so many games in the elemental actor to go in and to really play with that, which was wonderful.
Great. That's super. Well, maybe we can have another elemental discussion at a future time.
Yes.
And yes, it's been such a pleasure. It's lovely.
It's been gorgeous. Thank you so much.
I feel calm already just looking at your screen or wallpaper, whatever it is behind you. I feel better already. And your Art Deco mirror and your, was it Art Deco? Yeah.
I feel calm just talking to you anyway. So I adored our course together. And thank you for your incredible generosity for coming on today. It's been really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for asking me. And you are an elemental force yourself.
Thank you. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm going to be putting all the information where you can get in contact with Mel and discover the book. Please, it doesn't matter if you're an actor or would-be actor, it's life. It really just embodies you into life. And Mel, again, thank you so much. I wish you so many blessings. Thank you for you in the world. You are amazing. And thank you so, so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed.